Hey everybody, it's Steve at Short Shift Garage. Finally back from a break in the whole world of doing everything I was doing. So actually, I was traveling quite a bit, and just didn't have time to sit down and do this. But I'm back. So most of you that have gone through the courses and have got a good understanding how the neural network trainer works. Some of you probably pushed it over the edge. Some of you may have been dissatisfied with it, but it is what it is. It does work, and it will get your fuel trims to a safe place. Let's just put it that way, and it'll improve them quite a bit. So what do we do next? Now that we've got our trims where we want them to be, our volumetric efficiency where it needs to be, the next obvious point is fixing this running rich problem that ever since I think it was mid 2015, they changed from 0.0688 stoic over to a 0.0720. I'm not really sure what that was all about. I've heard that it's because that E10 fuel was going to be available everywhere, and non-ethanol gas was not going to be available. So I think Dodge tried to, cut that old wagon off at the pass, so to speak. And they went ahead and made them run richer because anytime you add ethanol, you have to add more fuel. And so that's what makes sense to me. I can't prove it. I don't know for sure. There's no real documentation on it any place. But if we were to assume that, it would make sense. It would make a lot of sense. So, but unfortunately, the problem is that you can go test. Go on to Amazon, you get yourself a basic little ethanol test kit. It's real simple, cheap. You go fill it up with a little bit of gasoline, you let it set for a certain period of time, and when you come back, you should be able to see the percentage of alcohol. It's a process. You add water to it, and the water separates, and it tells you how the whole thing works. But it's real easy to do. During the winter time, I would not change the stoic. I would leave it at 0.0720 if you have winter gas in your area. I do. I've got live in a cold area where we get down to negative, sometimes into the negative temperatures. So what they do here is they add ethanol. They increase the ethanol amount, and then they add butane. Make your car easier to start. Properly tuned car, you don't need it. Need that butane in there, but not everybody's cars are properly tuned. They're a one-size-fits-all tune based on sea level. So yeah, make it easier to start. They add a little butane to it. I know you're thinking of the Bic lighter. You click it and it shoots out a flame because butane's a gas, but it's not. It's actual liquid. So that's what they do here. And because of the gas prices and everything, it's taken a while for me to get back to summer fuels because they were trying to run out the supply of winter fuel. And I use top tier 1 gasoline from Chevron. You could use Shell, I think, and a few of the other ones. There's a couple other top tiers out there. Chevron is the one I've always used Chevron. But like I said, because people are not consuming 91 octane fuel as much right now due to gas prices as they normally would, they're all looking for cheaper gas. It takes longer. It took us a lot longer, and I just got a test a couple of days ago that says, "Hey, you're no longer on the winter fuel." So I had 6% ethanol in what's supposed to be E10. but it's down to 6%, and that's pretty much where my area stays during the summertime on summer fuel. So if Dodge tuned it for 10% and you're only getting 6%, you can safely modify your stowage to a little leaner. So here's what the stock looks like. This is my compare file showing here. 0.0720 is that's the purge vapor, but if you look at the odd, you'll see it's the same thing. Odd, even. I've got them all changed, but that's okay. You can just look at that. So the stoic, FA stoic even. I wish it wouldn't do that to me. But you see it's 720. That's the factory. And so what I did is I changed. I'll go back to the actual file now, and I have what I did is I took 15% out of it. Okay. That's pretty safe to start with, and 0.0701 works out to about 14.2 for a fuel to air ratio, which is much better than 13.8, which is actually closer to 13.9 if you round it. But it gives you a little better advantage there because we're running a little bit leaner, and your fuel trims will actually settle out. And more importantly, your timing will settle out because it's better suited for your fuel. So you just go in and you can just change all these to, I've got mine set at 0.0701, and I just knocked it down 15%. You can start there if you'd like. That's pretty good number. I see a lot of people going to 0.0701, but that's 15% taken out of it. So if we go back and look at that now, that takes care of the fueling issue for now, and a lot of you will find that's enough to take care of all the fueling issues. And there is one other thing that you can do, and that's in your power enrichment. You can bring it in now. You can bring it in earlier if you'd like. And the way you do that, I'll show you what the original was. The original was 3.1569 volts. So in other words, once your throttle blade on your, and now that this is the voltage on your throttle body voltage, okay? So this is where the blade position is, and it's at 3.1569 volts where it would normally go into power enrichment. We'll leave it on the air charge. You could change the P ratio if you want to, the same, but it's probably better to use just the air charge. Both P ratio and air charge are calculated, so either way. And then your hysteresis, okay, so if you don't understand what hysteresis, I think I'd explained it at one point, but hysteresis is, that's your variation. So 3.15, it could be plus or minus 0.0980, okay? So it may come in a little sooner, may come in a little later. I changed that, I narrowed down that hysteresis a little bit too. So I brought it down to 0.0784. So if I'm going to lower this one down, I don't want it coming in too soon. So it could, if everything lined up in the tune and the PCM decided to calculate it and have it come in way early, well, it doesn't. You'll actually have a stumble occur. So what you're trying to do is bring the PE in a little earlier, throw a little more power down to the tires, but not do it too soon. You do it too soon, it'll stumble. So you can play with this. Now, again, I use that 15% factor. I use 15% a lot when I'm dealing with fuel, especially in how it's applied. So a lot of people say start with 5 and work it up. I'll start with 15 and work it back. It's not gonna create any problems, other than maybe a little stumble here and there. so you can back it off if you want, take it to 5%. Just return it back to your standard factory, and then back it off by 10% maybe. That's really all you have to do. That's wide open throttle hysteresis and wide open throttle pedal threshold. You just drop it back so that it thinks it's in wide open. It thinks it's going to wide open throttle when the voltage is here instead of when it's up higher. So it just brings it in earlier, and it can be impressive. You'll be surprised what you might feel with that. That's a lot of these 91 octane tunes. That's about all they do. They'll change the stoic a little bit on you, and then they'll change the throttle threshold, so it makes it feel better, and it does make it feel better. So let's go back and let's just kind of look and see where we are with our tune. And one of the things that's nice about it is that my volumetric efficiency now is at 100.4%. Well, that's pretty nice. So I know I'm filling all of my cylinders 100%, which at high altitude, if you can do that, it means you got your tune pretty well dialed in. You got your VE table dialed in. The way you're fueling, it'll go to 100% on wide open throttle. That's what I am at right now. Loads 100% accelerator percentage. That's your accelerator pedal. It's not your throttle body. It's at 100%. And I'm at 4,000 RPM. So I'm kicking 12.5 on the spark, which is pretty nice. That's right about where I want to be. And if I look over at the fuel-to-air ratio, or air-fuel ratio, 12.75. I get down to 12.58 at the end of that wide open throttle, but that's still that's pretty respectable. I think that holds back. I mean, you might get a tiny bit of knock and maybe a little knock retard up there. It's hard to tell what it's going to be knock retard or whether it's going to be noise. If we go over here and we actually look at the knock retard, yeah, I do have a little bit over here. It's not a lot. 1.2, 1.8. So it did pull a little timing out because of it, but it's nothing long term. And if it was long term, then yeah, it knocks the hell out of you. Once you develop long term knock retard, then you'll never run in the high octane table again. So if you got long term knock retard, you've got to figure out what that is, clear it out, because that's what will take you out of your high octane timing tables. Short term retard, yeah, it's pretty minor. Just not a lot there. Nothing to really worry about. And it's not happening until I get up here. And of course, that's when the engine's making the most noise. So it's hard to say, is this noise? I don't like dummying down the knock sensors because I really want to see where they're at. But here's a huge improvement. So if we look at our timing, and just in our basic normal driving over here, we're not hitting those 40, 45 numbers. We're up here a little bit, 31.7, 32.7, 37.2, and 39.6. But this is, in sport mode, cruising around town. That's pretty much, okay, let's, 39.4. Those are still pretty high up there, but they're not bad. I'll accept that. What I'm more concerned about is what's my timing when I'm cranking on it, when I'm dumping it. And we all know that 33.1, that's not too bad. That's about where I want to be. The rest of these numbers here, we're looking at timing, and actually, if we look at the timing over time, let me dump that out of the way. You'll see that our actual spark is pretty darn stable now. It's not all over the place like it was before. It's not jagged. It's not bouncing around. It's because our air-fuel mixture is really stable now. So it's not trying to compensate. We look at our R2 sensors, and look at our long-term, short-term fuel trims. Yeah, this one's a little bit high. It bounces up every once in a while, but no big deal. It's not going over 8, so I'm not worried about it. But my trims, And I need you to understand that my trims are always going to be higher than yours, because unless you're at 4,000 foot elevation or higher, if you're higher than that, you'll notice that your trims are going to be higher. But these are pretty good fuel trims. I'm not upset with these at all. I'm really happy. The phasing on the O2 sensors is about right. Bank one is richer, so it's always lagging behind. It's also in a different location, so they're never going to line up perfectly. And you can adjust the positions if you wanted to, and probably line those up better. Let's look at our general overall fuel trims at this point with this, and we see they're pretty well settled in. None of those crazy high numbers. That's my long term on bank one. Long term on bank two is, it's for my elevation. This is beautiful. Short terms on the averages are back down, and we're now in this area here where we're adding fuel. This turns out to be transmission related. And what happens is it goes into torque intervention and it pulls the timing out. And of course, then it goes it goes lean, and it adds a bunch of fuel because it cuts fuel. So if you're moving the throttle at all while you're in between shifts, you'll get this weird high numbers where it's adding fuel. It's not really adding fuel. So this is not filtered. This is totally unfiltered data. So all that doesn't look too bad. The combined, you see we're right over here. If we combine the two, long-term, short-term, bank one and bank two, we're pretty light. We're pretty good shape. So I'm very happy with that. I have no complaints about that. Fuel air enrichment is coming in. So if we log fuel air enrichment, which is, of course, this table here under air charge, you can see how these numbers are matching up beautifully. There's 61, 63. Go ahead and look at yours. And if you do it this way, I do it with air charge in milligrams. I actually follow this table here when I set this up because I want to see where it is. It's the only way to line up with it. Now, people do increase these numbers over here to pour a little more fuel down it. If you do that, you're going to want to, it's awful hard to do that. And I don't really recommend it for a lot of reasons. It's kind of the lazy man's way. It's better to change your stoic and let the stoic handle this. And as you can see, it's doing a good job of it. And the AFR that we're getting out of that is, pretty nice. 14.2 is what 0.0701 is. And so I'm running constantly at a nice 14.2 during daily driving, which is right where I want to be. Hemis run a little less. They're not 14.7. They're going to be around 14.4 for optimum. But I like it right around 14.27. It just seems happy there. So, but you can see we're not going in. I was getting 11s before. This is definitely an improvement. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm not at all unhappy with my timing. It seems like it's where I want to be. But we could do some massaging on the timing because you see how it kind of bounces around here now. I have not filtered this timing out for those times when the transmission's pulling timing out and like torque goes negative. But that's in the torque model, and that's going to be the next thing we look at. Because once we get the torque model dialed in, then we can go and start messing with timing. A lot of guys will go in and they'll smooth their timing table. I'm not a big fan of that. It works, but I'm not a big fan of it. I'd rather get my torque model dialed in so that I'm not pulling so much timing in between shifts. I've got nice crisp shifts. And there's no, and the other big thing is one of the reasons it pulls torque on you is that it's trying to protect the transmission from damage. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword down there. When we get into the torque model, we don't want to take out too much because we don't want to hurt the transmission, but we definitely want to look at it and see if there's some place to make improvements. And when we do that, that'll be basically on wide open throttle pulls. We don't really need to change the torque model in our daily driving, the steady state stuff. Cruising around town, let that shift go as it plans, because you're not racing in town. But when you go wide open throttle, we want to look at that and see where it's going. But for now, these are the two major changes that will help you get a little better performance, calm down that rich running problem that we have. So you change your FA stoic to 0.0701 from 0.0720, and that definitely helps a lot. So let's just go look at our channels for a minute. And so if we look at, it's kind of a little bigger than I need it. Let's get it over here. All right. So let's look at the wide open throttle pulls. Oops. We pin that. And we actually did pretty good on that pull. This is it right in here. And our volumetric efficiency is a good example here. Let me see if I can get that right where I want it. So we're at 100% on our volume, 100.2%. That's because it's P ratio. But you can actually, it almost acts like, okay, you've got boost. You don't really have boost, you have velocity. And it could kind of give you it kind of looks like boost, but it isn't. You can't exceed barometric pressure without boost. But this is the way that HP Tuners calculates it. So that's what we have to live with. But 100.2% on your volumetric efficiency says your VE tables are right where they want to be for a wide open throttle. And when we get down into our normal cruising areas, let's say 35 miles an hour, running around town, you're 68%, and you're holding on stoic. So this is the commanded. When commanded is at lambda, you're good. When you get over here to wide open throttle periods, and we drop our EQ ratio drops. That means we're no longer at stoic commanded, which is what it's telling us right here. This is post-torque intervention where it's starting to ramp out. In other words, a shift has happened. It's ramping out of torque intervention, which means it's adding back fuel and timing. So, that shift is right here, and that's how long it takes to recover from it. So that's why we can do something with our torque model. Injector pulse width average, that's all 8 injectors. Of course, our short-term, long-terms are at 0 at this point. O2 voltage is commanded evap's at 0. It's not going to pull evap on you. O2 voltage 0.9, 0.8. So this is bank 2 sensor 1, and it's a little bit behind the bank 1 sensor 1 by several millivolts here, and that's why you have this difference here. So if you see the red and the green line are not lined up with each other, that's because of this. Now we could adjust that. I typically don't. I just leave it, and because I know it's there and I know to expect that. Sparks at 15.5. MBT, my ceiling, maximum brake torque was 22.5. So The SAE advance was 17.5, that's what it says it wanted to go to. We had a barometric advance correction of -5. We had knock retard of 2, so there you are. You're 15.5. Actually, the knock retard is, but you got a fuel retard at 2% also. So we lost 2% of fuel. The short term was there. So it's never going to line up 100%, but it's pretty close. So we expected 391 foot-pounds of torque. That's expected torque at sea level. The driver demand torque was actually 316. That's what I wanted. It gave me 310. It gave the transmission 311. So this is the transmission torque. That's what it's actually at. That's the one I like to monitor for torque. I can show you what it would be at sea level. We can do that real quick. Let's add, and I made up a, oops, I want to go down here in group 4. We'll add a series in there, and I have sea level torque set up in here, excuse me, and so we should be able to see that. So we get back over here to our wide open throttle where our max torque is, and we actually got 369 foot-pounds of torque. So that's actually not too bad. It's lower than what Dodge says, but that's all brochure stuff, so you can believe it if you want. If you're trying to make it produce what the brochure says it should produce, just remember that was done in a lab someplace. So, I mean, yeah, maybe you can hit it 375 or 400, I think is what they say it's supposed to be at. Yeah, here's the expected torque at 400. And that's expected torque calibration. If you can hit it, good luck. Not on a stock engine. And certainly not at my altitude. But this is what it would probably be at sea level. And that's calculated. I don't know for sure. If my barometric changes, then yeah, it's gonna go lower because kind of have to use a fixed value in the math. But here's what's important. What I demanded and what I got within a couple of pounds, that's pretty darn good. So what do we think? I wonder what we got as horsepower. We can take a look at that. And I actually have horsepower calculated, which is another little goodie. Let's see what we got. Horsepower. That's crankshaft horsepower. Let's see what we got there. Let's just do crankshaft. CHP, California Highway Patrol. No, not really. So it's crankshaft horsepower. And let's see what we got there. Yeah, wide open throttle. So 363, 60, torque's at 369, horsepower's at 363. And that's not, I mean, that's respectable for a 5.7, given, that's not brochure by any means, but I think they said 374 on the horsepower. But we're hitting 363 with 369 foot-pound of torque. Kind of, and again, these are calculated. These are not on a dyno. We're not in a fixed location. We're not in a single gear, in a 1-to-1 ratio, which is really what it takes to get the right numbers there. But then that's respectable. 369, 363 out of a 5.7. I'm happy with that. So, digest some of this. Take a couple of days. Get your play around with your stoic. If you need to, if you're getting maybe a little too much knock, You can raise the number a little bit. If you raise it, it's going to go richer. If you lower it, it's going to go leaner. But if you can lean it down a little bit, you're definitely going to see, better numbers. So if you want to know what the math is, I'll give you the math parameters real quick for the crank horsepower. It's engine RPM and actual torque, and then it's 0.1315. So these are numbers. You can go to Chat GPT and tell them, hey, give me horsepower for my altitude. That's actually should be percent. No, that should be horsepower. But doesn't make it a difference. Give you the same number. That's that one, and then for sea level torque, it's 1.315, which was on that particular day. That was my, that's kind of in the range. Might go. This is barometric pressure. The difference in barometric pressure from sea level to 4,000 foot elevation. If you're at sea level, then you don't need it. You're going to be. You know what your actual torque is. It's what it is. Horsepower, same thing. If you're at sea level, then all you do is engine divided by RPM, engine RPM times actual torque, and then you divide that by 5252. 5252 is the magic number. You always, in order to get horsepower, you always divide RPM times torque. The result of that, you divide it by 5252. So there you go. Anyway, so that's enough for today. I think you got enough information. I'll get this posted up on YouTube pretty quick. And y'all take care. Have a good one.